Hey, what's going on, everybody? We are live on our Spotlight series with Aaron Scott Young of Laughlin, USA. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, so give us a little bit of a background into you before we dig into the business. What business is?
Wow, I've been an entrepreneur. I've been making a payroll, so not self-employed. I've had employees for 40 years now. I started my first company in the late 1982. I was the first recycling business in Portland, Oregon, then sold that company, became one of the first cellular phone dealers in the Northwest in 1986.
Okay.
Became VP of a company, and then we took that company public on the big board of NASDAQ in financial services, over 300 offices around the world. And then in 1996, left that company, had made a lot of money in the stock, started buying businesses and fixing them, and have been doing that ever since.
So almost like a hobby, but with money attached to it.
It's always fun to be tinkering with and fixing things. Once it becomes a process, then it's better for me to get out of the way and let somebody else who's a professional manager do it versus a guy who's cleaning up the I don't want to say mess, but the chaos.
Okay. I love this. This is great. We're probably going to have you back on. So the first thing the first thing that you mentioned, and I want you to say it again. Do you feel like that is the cutoff point? The difference between an entrepreneur and an operator, right? Or someone that is self-employed. Basically, when you are employing other people and paying a W-2 salary.
I think most entrepreneurs they suck at management. Okay, because that doesn't mean you couldn't start a business and be a good manager. I'm saying most serial entrepreneurs, first of all, most serial entrepreneurs are broke because they have lots of good ideas. They don't have enough money. They don't have enough social capital to be big quickly. So if you don't have a plan and a list and some money, it's very difficult in this day and age to be successful. You'll end up getting buried under your own weight. And so most entrepreneurs are people with a lot of ideas, and sometimes they even pull the trigger on the idea, but they end up becoming self-employed rather than owning a company that's bigger than them, meaning a business that doesn't rely upon their being there to know how to do everything, fix everything, answer every question, and so on. So I want a company, because I'll tell you what, I learned a long time ago, I learned this quote, and it's sort of this little maxim that said, if you have a difficult job, give it to a lazy man and he'll find an easier way to do it. Okay, so this is the story of my life. I've been looking at a situation going, how can we make that easier? How can we make it work? How can I get other people to do the work?
Yep.
And I just stand back. And so I think that, and the other thing is that entrepreneurship, in my mind, is heavy on the creative side, heavy on the vision side. So an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur, will do better, in my opinion, as the chairman of the board than they will do as the president of the company. The president needs to be a good operator, manager, inspirer, kind of leveler, keeping everything under control. Whereas a really good visionary entrepreneur is freaking out, bull in a china shop, reacts quickly to things, wants to change something if it's not working. And the abruptness of that kind of a personality isn't ideal for building something that's very big. But they can be the chairman. They can have the eye on the ball. They can see the big vision, but they need to be up above the operations of the company and trying to just guide the big ship rather than, shoveling coal into the steam engine. They need to be They need to be focused on the big picture, because that's the gift of entrepreneurship, is seeing something that other people don't see opportunities other people don't see. But that does not mean you're a good leader. And as a matter of fact, one of my books, it's called The Critical 20, and it's a book I give it away a lot. And in that book, I clearly say that just because you own a company doesn't mean you're the best person to run the company. And most people cannot, they're such control freaks, they can't get over it, which is why most of them are broke, and why I just go do fun stuff all the time and nobody tells me what to do, and I don't have any debt. I don't have any shareholders looking over my shoulder. I have a business partner, and for 26 years, we've been partners 26 years. He handles the CFO and operational stuff. I handle the marketing and sales and affiliate stuff. Mm-hmm. And I go out and buy companies. And then we have a team that fixes them.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man, figure out what you're good at and then stick to it, and don't go, oh, but I can learn it. No, don't do that. Do what you're great at and get other people who are great at your things you suck at, get them around you, and then you'll be successful.
I love it. Here's a question for you. So let's say someone's really good at sales, owns a company. Where would you stick them in that? What should they do? Right? Because that I see
revenue officer.
What was that?
Put them in charge of sales.
Put them in charge of sales.
Yeah, but somebody who's naturally great at sales is typically not great at operations, typically not great at marketing, typically not good at accounting, typically not good at information technology, computers, phones, copy machines, all that electronic stuff.
Correct.
So just say you go out, make the rain, and the team right here will support you. And you go make the rain and let us do this. But don't get in the middle of telling the operator how to operate, because if you're great at sales, you probably suck at operations.
Got it. I found that to be pretty true. I'm really good at sales and relationships. Operations is something I've had to learn painfully slow.
Well, okay. I could comment all over the place. Just the main thing is, let me give you an example. I had a really successful doctor who owned multiple clinics. Mm-hmm. I'm driving down the road. She's been a client for a long time. This is years ago. She calls me up. She goes, Aaron, do you have a few minutes for me to ask you some questions? And I said, sure. She goes, so I'm working on my bylaws for my S corporation, and I'm kind of stuck in some things. And I said, wait a minute, you're working on your bylaws? And she said, yeah. And I said, are you doing something that I didn't know? Like, are you going out to get investment capital? Are you going to sell the company? Are you bringing in a partner? Something where you need to amend your bylaws. She goes, no, I just thought that I was supposed to write bylaws. And so I've been studying how to write bylaws. I said, how much do you make an hour as a doctor? Because she's a high level doctor and she's a good business owner too, but she wasn't great at corporate structure. She was good at medical stuff. Mm-hmm. She told me, and I said, for $100, we can give you the bylaws that you need. For $1,000, we can, optimize them as long as it's not overly complicated. If you need something special, but for what you're doing, just boilerplate bylaws are sufficient.
Yeah.
She goes, are you kidding me? I said, no. How many hours have you spent on this? I asked. And she told me like 30 hours.
Yep.
And she was trying to learn something and do something because she assumed she was supposed to be able to do it. And she wasted tens of thousands of dollars that she could have been spending doing medical work or not doing medical work and being with her family.
Yeah.
Because she was trying to burn the midnight oil instead of just getting somebody who already had it wrapped up, pay a couple of bucks, be done.
Yeah. There's a lot being said to hire out everything that you don't want to do.
If you suck at, okay, not if you suck, because then nobody will want to admit they suck. Okay. Mm-hmm. Most of us have, one or two superpowers. And you said sales and relationships, right?
Yep.
And I'm the same way. Okay. So the other thing I'm really good at is I'm really good at seeing the end. So I can keep my eye on the ball while all the distractions are coming, and I can keep us on track. Those are really my gifts. So I'm great at making the rain and keeping us on track. Beyond that, I suck. Okay. I mean, I'm a nice guy. I'm a good dad, good grandpa, but I'm suck at all those other things. So, Henry Ford, seventh wealthiest human to walk this planet, said, because he got taken to court on slander charges because somebody was mouthing off about him and he mouthed off back about the newspaper, and they took him to court and they quizzed him on philosophy and politics and economics and all this stuff. And he finally slams his hand down on the witness stand and he said, "I'm not the smartest, but I surround myself with competent people." That's how he did it. That's how he built Ford Motor Company, fully integrated, vertically integrated. They owned everything in their whole supply chain. He shouldn't have been that rich. They said, "You're not smart enough to be that rich." He said, "I surround myself with competent people." And that's what I do too. And I encourage everybody who actually wants to get rich to do the same thing. Otherwise, you'll make money only up to the level of hours you have, cleverness you have, education you have, experience you have. That's all the further you're going to go, and you're done. So if you want to supercharge that, get some other people who play at the things you work at, and surround yourself with them.
I love it. So why did you, and I know we're going back and I'm going to come back to this, but it's a question I always ask and I do want to get it out up front. What made you become an entrepreneur? What was that moment?
I was the oldest of 5 kids in a middle to lower middle class family. My dad worked 2 jobs. My mom did daycare. I was the oldest, so I was supposed to help a lot. And I realized very quickly, if I wanted to have nicer jeans or these new shoes with a swoosh on them called Nike that were new, in the late 70s, around 1980, I'd have to figure out how to make the money myself. I had zero interest in working at a fast food joint or something. Actually, I can tell you the moment. I can tell you what it was.
Yeah.
A guy at church, when I was a freshman in high school, a guy at church who managed an apartment complex, asked me, "Do you know how to paint?" And I said, "You mean paint pictures?" He goes, "No, paint walls."
Yeah.
I said, "Not really, but I suppose I could learn." And he goes, "Okay." So he hired me for like $3 an hour, 1978, to help him turn apartments as people would move out. So I'd go in and paint. And, when I turned 16 and I could drive, the guy that owned the building and a whole bunch of other apartment buildings wanted me to come over and paint the outside of his house.
Okay.
So I'm driving back and forth to this guy's house every day. Got a guy helping me, another kid. And I get to know the guy. And I finally said, so I'm 16 years old. Yeah. I'm at the house of a guy who owns a whole bunch of apartment buildings, and I'm theoretically working for the guy who manages this one complex. And I said to the owner of the buildings, I said, "I don't know what you pay your managers to turn apartments, but if you'll pay me $10 an hour, I'll do all your apartment complexes."
Okay.
And he's like, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Good, you're hired." So he started paying me $10 an hour. I started paying a bunch of other teenagers $3.50 an hour. And by the time I graduated high school, my senior that summer, he had me do a whole building, gave me the entire building, refinishing floors, putting in sheetrock, new appliances, everything. And I just walked around with these little sticky dots going, "Oh, fix that, fix that." I was clean. I wasn't picking up a paintbrush.
Yep.
And that's when I learned. And then I started the recycling business, and I was in the Mormon church back in much of my life I spent in the Mormon church, and I was going to go on a Mormon mission. So I needed money for Christmas gifts. I started picking up old newspapers. I made a lot of money in a very short time at Christmas. So I came back in April at the end of school with a whole mapped out city of Portland, Oregon, and flyers and a route book. And we just started knocking doors and handing out flyers. And I built it all along with another guy, so that it would be, we were using technology. It was analog technology, but we could do 3 of those flyers on one 8.5 by 11 sheet. We could keep track of everybody on these little books we'd made that were little like route books. You just fill in information. And so when it came for time for me to leave on my Mormon mission, and you've seen those missionaries out on the 10 speeds and stuff, I could walk away from it and it would operate. And the whole time I was gone on my mission, even though we had a guy replace me, I still got paid every day.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how many 19-year-olds have figured out how to build a business. You can go away for a couple of years and still get paid every day.
Not many.
And then I came back. I worked a little bit. I met this girl. I fell in love with her. I thought she's not going to want to be married to a garbage man. So at 22, I did something that I didn't know that I couldn't do, which was I sold the recycling business.
Okay.
So I sold the first company at 22 years old and bought my inventory of cellular phones and opened my first store. And then pretty soon I had 5 stores. So this was all before 25 years old.
Yeah.
You know, and ended up with 25 salespeople and these 5 stores and a big installation shop, because back then you'd install the phone. You know, you didn't put it in your pocket, you installed it under the car seat. And this was before even those big brick phones.
Yeah.
We sold those too. The long and short of it is I didn't know I couldn't do it. So I just kept doing things and creating systems that made it easier for me. Remember, because I was a lazy man.
Yep.
So I just kept making it easier for me, and it just kind of kept working. And when I got offered the job, my only job I've ever had, to work for this multinational as a vice president of sales, there are 3 VPs reported to the CEO, right? Over 300 offices around the world. And then we went public. I was part of the team going public onto NASDAQ. I mean, I just didn't know at 29 that I was too young or inexperienced to do it.
Got it.
We just did it.
Just did it.
That's the story of my life. It's like I just keep trying stuff, and sometimes it works.
At a pure, what's the easiest way to get this done and make systems around everything?
Yeah.
I love it.
It's simple, stupid.
Yep. That's true. That is very, very true. So out of all the businesses that you've operated, right, because there are several, what was the most challenging? And then I'm going to ask you, what was your favorite?
We're buying up accounting firms right now, and for specializing in tax planning. Okay. So we work with high-level clients, and as soon as we do the structural stuff, the corporate stuff, the next thing they want to know is, I don't think my CPA will be able to handle this, or I'm worried that I'm overpaying my taxes. And so for years, I just sent it off to other firms, and then finally got sick of that and started buying firms. And that has been a little bit of a challenge, because the greatest tax planning CPAs, the ones who really understand the code, think, and I have Lee and I have a great accounting person, CPA, who's our partner and she's running this operation. But most accountants that I've met think more like an engineer than a salesperson. So it has been a learning curve for me to learn how to communicate with, inspire, motivate, scale with accountants. So I'd say that's been one of the biggest challenges. My favorite one is easily, we have a horse breeding operation. We breed Tennessee walking horses and McCurdy plantation horses, which is a heritage breed. And we've got about 30 breeding animals and a big training barn. And we bring people's horses in for breeding and for training. And again, I own it, but I don't run it. Yep. Horseback riding is my hobby, and I've been doing it since I was a little boy. And that being in the barn, looking at the genetics, who are we going to breed to whom, and seeing the results of those babies and then watching them grow and then finding homes for them or moving them into our program is far and away the most fun thing I do.
That's awesome.
With the exception of playing with my grandkids.
Got it.
Which we have 7 grandkids and they're phenomenal.
That's got to be a lot of fun.
You're too young, man, but give yourself time. I've been married.
I have 2.
You have 2
I'm not grandkids, but 2 kids.
2 little kids? How old are your kids?
They are 8, soon to be 9, and 5. Both boys.
Fun time.
Great.
So my oldest grandchild's 10 and my youngest is 1.
Nice.
My wife and I've been married for 36 years. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me was marrying her and selling the recycling business and getting cleaned up and becoming more of a professional. There's a million other things we can talk about, things that are fun that I get to do. But anyway, I'll stick with your questions instead of.
No. Listen, take this wherever you want it to go, because I think people don't stress the importance of family enough. Everyone's very caught up in a hustle culture.
Yeah.
And they neglect the things that matter,
So when I was younger, I worked hard. Yeah. And I was always starting something new and building something and working, getting it going, then getting somebody to run it and then going to the next thing. And I've been speaking around the world for many years. And so I still get on airplanes, regularly, pretty much every week, to go someplace on the globe and give talks. And I get paid well to do that, and I enjoy it. And so there's another, I don't know if I should mention a different podcast or not here.
Yeah, you can. That's fine.
There's a guy named John Lee Dumas, an EO, Entrepreneur on Fire, EO Fire. And they're a very successful podcast. I don't know if you've ever heard of him before, but he asked me the second time I was on, the second time I was episode like 1700 or something.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And yeah, he's been doing he podcasts every day. And he said, "What's your greatest business hack?" And the question caught me off guard, but I knew the answer immediately. I didn't take a moment to wait. I said, "I plan a romantic date with my wife at least once a week." He goes, "What? Nobody's ever said that before." I said, "Look, when my marriage is smooth, when we're getting along, we're happy and we're arms locked, working towards a goal, everything works for me. Yeah. And if that relationship is off at all, if we're arguing about something or we have some thing that's bugging us, it screws me up on other stuff I'm doing. So the greatest thing I can do to be successful is make sure that I'm putting first things first, putting my wife, our children, our grandchildren at the highest priority, understanding that all these things, 36 companies, right, are there to provide me with the opportunity to live the life I want, not to be the life I have to live.
Correct.
Right? They're an engine for me to do the things I want to do, go the places I want to go, buy the stuff I want to buy, eat the food I want to eat, drive the automobile I want to, live as many places and own the places if I want to, which we've very typically had multiple residences. And it's not because I get such a rush out of the work. I like it when people say your thing makes a big difference in my life. Yeah. This thing I learned from you, the thing you provide, the service you have, the comment you made, the book you wrote, that feels great. But it's not why I do it. I do it to have the life I want to have with the people that I love.
Oh, amen. 100%. I find that a lot of entrepreneurs fall into a trap where they are heavy. If your finances aren't right, if your faith isn't right, if your relationships aren't right, your family life isn't right, any one of those things, and fitness, any one of those things can make everything else snowball out of control. So there are so many entrepreneurs that focus maybe on one or two, but they leave out their faith, or they leave out their family, or they leave out their fitness. And if you ignore something long enough, it will create enough chaos to bleed into those other areas of life that they are trying to either improve or, maintain.
I would agree with you on that. I'm going to give you a different perspective, though, just for fun. And I'm not advocating for this, but I want to make a point. First of all, I don't believe in work-life balance. I don't believe in it. I know there's a lot of people striving for it, but I think it's not real. I think that there's counterbalance. Sometimes you need to work. Like I thought that I needed to really work 4.5 days a week, in 2 states away when I bought Laughlin Associates. So that once I got it fixed, which took about 18 months, I could start going less and less and less to where I never go at all now.
Yep.
And yet it feeds me hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, right? With no job. I don't get into the CRM. I don't manage anybody. I don't hire and fire. I set the direction. The team does the work, right?
Yep.
And I live at the beach. That's generally true in all the things I do. So I think counterbalance. If you're mega focused on going, like, prepping for a marathon, you're going to have to sacrifice some of your work, some of your family time, some of your other travel, because you need to run this many miles every day.
Yep.
Right? And then when it's done, you can quit running all those miles every day and go back to going on vacation with your family.
Yep.
Right? So that's how I believe you want to find a way to be able to keep some sort of equilibrium over time. I'll say one more thing about, because you mentioned faith a couple of times, and I don't know what your faith is, but I'll just say this: the older I've become, I'm 59, the older I get, the broader my perspective has become on spirituality. And I lived within the confines of a very rigorous religious dogma. And I learned a lot from it, and I had tremendous experiences, and I don't find any fault. Good for anybody that's doing it. I think that's great. But I realized at some point the machine of the church was having a disproportionate, and I think it was overly telling me what to think, what to believe, what to think of other people, what was good, what was bad, what's the right language, what's the right dress code, what do we eat, what do we drink, what do we not do. And it creates a circumstance that becomes, at least for me, it became easy to become judgmental. Like, am I checking all the boxes? And is that person over there? And it even had me look at my children sometimes in a disappointed way because they weren't checking all the boxes that I was trying to teach them to check. In retrospect, some of the boxes weren't even healthy boxes to check. But the older I've gotten, the more I've thought, if I feel, I acknowledge there's something impacting me. There's something that I don't see that nudges me in certain directions, that gives me clarity on something, that tugs at me sometimes. And we can call it whatever we want. And based on where we grew up and what our parents taught us and what was kind of the norm around where we were, we're going to think that. If you grew up in the United States and you're from European descent or Filipino descent or whatever, there's a good chance you're Christian. If you came from certain places in Eastern Europe, you might be Jewish. If you came from further south or a lot of Asian countries, you may be Muslim. If you came from India, you're probably Hindi, right? The Judeo-Christians believe one God. but the Hindus believe in hundreds of gods, but they believe it just as adamantly.
Yep.
Right. And the older I got and the more I traveled the world, the more I thought, because I was trained up in a certain belief system and other people's were trained up in a different one, I'm not saying I'm wrong, they're right. I'm saying we're all trying to relate to something that's impacting us that we can't really define. And so instead of putting it into a box and putting a bunch of rules on it, why not just become more sensitive to whatever it is? Instead of trying to draw a picture of it or make a list, let's just pay attention.
Yeah.
And that has created a spiritual life I didn't even know was possible for me, because I don't need to judge anybody. The only thing I should be paying attention to is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because if there's going to be a judgment, if there's going to be a bar of God or whatever, how we've humanized this experience that we suspect will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's been there. So nobody's been to that courtroom in heaven, right? That's here to tell about it. Whatever happens, my thing is, if God is kind of a super grandpa, kind of like this loving, wonderful, white-haired, whatever. If that's what it is, the way I was brought up to believe in God,
mm-hmm.
If I use that as my example, then I think when we get to the other side, cross your fingers. Hopefully, there's another side, right? But I'm rooting for it. That's my hope, and I act in faith based on that hope. But I don't think there's going to be a court circumstance up there. I think it's going to be if God is like a person, like a grandpa or a dad, mm-hmm. Am I going to go toward him, or am I going to want to stay in the corner? And I think that's the judgment. How close are we going to allow ourselves to be next to or highly acquainted with that creator, versus going, you guys go ahead. I think it's easier for me to think of it in that way. And that's not a business topic, but I think that I have better experiences. I work with men, women, I work with people from all different faiths in the business that I do. And I've noticed that my success has accelerated the less judgmental I am of how somebody else lives their life.
That's a great takeaway. So it's
where
tough
to go from there.
So yeah, it's tough to switch back to business after that, but I'm going to try my best. I do think this is all very impactful stuff that no one really speaks about, which is why I'm enjoying this conversation so much. Next, with LaghlinUSA, walk us through that. You went in there. Did you work there first, or you realized you worked there first before acquiring it, or you bought it?
I was competing with them. We had, I think, 4 or 5 other resident agent companies, corporation companies. So when Mr. Laughlin died, their trust attorney called me and said, "Are you interested in buying the company?" And we did. And I got in there. We had about 80 employees at that time. And I thought, there's some people there's got to be some wholesale slaughter here.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of good people here. So that first week, we fired, I think, 30 people or something, and repositioned some people, and immediately expanded out of just Nevada.
Huh?
And established relationships we had with our other companies so that we could immediately be in all 50 states, and then created a culture of they were very vertical, and I like things very horizontal.
Okay.
Right. So I don't like there to be loads of management. We have 3 levels. There's the president, there's the VPs, and there's all the employees.
Got it.
And that's it. And we're more like 40 people now. And because technology over time, over 20 plus years. So what I wanted to do was create a new environment, they'd been very rigidly managed.
Mhm.
I wanted to create an environment where the people in the trenches, who were the ones that really knew what was going on, felt safe bringing new ideas forward. Here are things people ask for. Here's something we're doing that I think doesn't work very well. This part of the software doesn't really, it's hard to do it. It's hard, I wanted everybody to come with all their ideas, which they did. And over that 18 months, we dramatically changed the face of the company. And I'll tell you what, when Lee and I bought the company, they had 300% turnover per year.
Oh, wow.
So think about that.
Yeah.
Think about replacing somebody 3 times a year in a
Crazy
sales
turn.
job. It's just revolving door crap. Nobody trusts anybody. Nobody feels safe. Nobody wants to open their mouth. Everybody just wants to keep their head down and have their job. Now, our average tenure is over 14 years now.
Oh my God.
So now we hire more intentionally. We in my Unshackled Owner course, I teach about how do you the whole principle of we hire for outcomes. We don't hire for a task. Mm-hmm. So I don't hire somebody to be in sales or to be the receptionist or to be customer service. I'm hiring somebody to accomplish a specific outcome. And the job description clearly lines that out. And it describes what the consequences are for success or failure. And so everybody knows when they are applying, here's the expectation. Tell me how you're going to do it. Okay, let's do it. We have something very specific to measure against, right? And what happens is when people know exactly what they're expected to do, what the goal is, mm-hmm. when they know that their work today actually moved the needle towards the big goal because they know the goal. Mm-hmm. Most people don't know the goal of the company. Most companies don't even have a clear vision of where they're going. Most closely held companies, but a lot of big companies. I've worked with a lot of big companies that were equally confused. And I'm a big believer that if you hire good people, the best people you can afford, and you show everybody what the goal is, you explain what the values are, and you say, here's why you're here, and here's how we're going to measure your success. And if you're successful, here are the consequences. And if you're not successful, here are the consequences. Maybe it's being fired. I always talk about, maybe people will write this down, I talk about retrain, reposition, or replace. Okay, so maybe I've done a poor job as a leader training somebody, or maybe they're a really good person, but we just have them in the wrong slot, or maybe they're just wrong. So, retrain, reposition, replace. That when people know what's expected, when you keep score, we have scoreboards. Everybody knows every day if they're winning or losing. Everybody in the whole company knows how everybody's doing every day.
How did you build that? I'd love to know more on that.
I'm not trying to be coy, but I mean, I teach a class called the Unshackled Owner, where I teach my formula for building dozens of companies that make millions of dollars that I don't have to go to work at. And it's no trick. It's not some marketing deal. It's how to build a real business instead of just a glorified job.
Got it. Okay.
And it's a little early, but I'll tell you, the Unshackled book, it's this date that we're recording this.
Yeah, today, please drop it, 7/6.
The Unshackled book was finished. First thing this morning, my co-author and I, who's one of my students, heard me speak in England, told me what he was doing, joined the course 65 times to his company. Think about that. 65 times. He was already successful. He has blown up. He's kicking ass, and he's 32 years old. And he's making tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. Anyway, gross. Anyway, today we finished the final review. We've gotten the final stuff back from the editor of the book. We went through the last 5 or 6, just approved these changes, and it went to the New York publisher. And so this Christmas time, the book called Unshackled, forward written by the former president of Warner Brothers. And then you've got everybody from the founder of the E! Network and Uggs Boots to the founder of Teladoc, which is an $18 billion company now.
Yeah.
They're all the endorsements. It's going to be a really powerful book for entrepreneurs and for managers in public companies.
I love it.
Anyway,
I will share this. If you ping me when the book's coming out, I will reshare this and get this out with your book attachment.
Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd love that. Yeah,
I don't want anything out of it. I just want to help. You came on here. You're sharing a ton of information with us and the guests, and honestly, this is incredible.
Well, any help would be much appreciated.
You got it. So we were talking about culture, and after taking over a company.
Yep.
And what's challenging is you're having such gold that I don't want to interrupt you on the pointed questions after you make a point for you to extrapolate more. And so I have to go back a little bit, and I apologize because I know I'm going to miss some questions.
No,
however,
I love it.
When you took over, okay, you clearly have been looking into companies. And right now there is a culture of buying and selling companies, or buying companies, fixing them, and flipping them. The majority of people that I see doing this have no business doing it. Okay. I do a lot of the financing. I see everything from every angle. Okay. And I would like you to give a rundown when you're looking at a company, because you identified Laughlin when you took over that. When you took over that company, the first thing you saw was turnover and culture shock, and the only way to fix it was to do the opposite.
Yeah.
What are you looking at when you look into companies?
To buy or to help somebody else fix?
To buy, and then also flip it to help someone else's.
So if I'm going to be involved, first of all, I have to want to be involved with the company. It can't just be a good idea. So like, I'm not going to have a trucking company. I'm not going to have an egg farm. I'm not going to have, I'm not against things like self-storage or anything. I think those are really great money makers. Mm-hmm. It just holds no interest for me. You know, it's just like the real estate I've developed is almost all rural acreage where you can have animals, because I like that lifestyle. I find it fun more than having a multi-door, a small apartment complex or something. So first thing is I have to personally give a shit about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Second thing is I have to be able to say, is there some way that this thing I'm looking at can enhance anything else that I'm doing? I mentioned the accounting firms a minute ago. Well, I own these incorporation firms, mm-hmm. and so I need the accounting. So why not go find the best of those, organize that into a machine, make that a $10 or $20 million company, and be able to feed everybody from the incorporation side over there and everybody from the tax planning side back to the incorporation estate planning side, right? It makes perfect sense. So it's got to be something I'm interested in, and then it's either got to be something that will enhance something else I'm already doing, or something where I can clearly see that with whatever skills and resources I have, I can come in and very quickly affect significant improvement over what's already there. If something's already performing at a high level of efficiency, like, let's say it's a laundromat, there's no fun in it, right? And somebody else can buy that who isn't really interested in entrepreneurship, and they can buy it and they can hold it in their portfolio. And it's great. I'm not against it. You asked me what I do.
Yep.
I'm looking for something that's going to be kind of fun, that's going to catch my imagination, and that I can see, we can build this thing, we can do these things, and we'll get this result, and we'll get good management in there. We'll get them doing stuff. And then I'll train the management. I'll get them really empowered and solid. And then I can just let go of it and do a weekly phone call and be completely out of it.
So you check in weekly, and you're looking for situations that, one, you're interested in, and two, 1 + 1 = 3, meaning you can leverage that new company in everything else that you have or going on.
So at least something else that I've got. It's going
not
to
everything,
be
but
something I have, or I can go in and enhance that company.
Got it. Awesome. That's what I figured. I made that exact mistake 2 years ago, doing something that had nothing to do with my primary business, which is lending. Never again.
You know, when you learn how to do things, when you learn how, and again, I'm not here to shill my course. I'm just saying the reason I created the course was because so many people were paying me, and I'm not a consultant, so I just own companies, right? But people were paying me $25,000 a day to come sit with them in their C-suite or sit with their board and just be in a conversation with them for one day.
Yeah.
And I did that for many times over several years. And I thought, this is a huge waste of time because they're not going to change. They're not going to fundamentally change the way they want to based on me hanging out with them for a day. Maybe they'll get a gold nugget. Nobody ever complained. I got a lot of referrals. Nobody was unhappy with what I did. But I felt like this is almost unfair to take their money because they're not going to be able to fundamentally shift the way they need to in this minute that we're together. And so I created the course just saying, look, first this, when this is done, then this, when that's done, then this. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. I've done big law firms, 100-lawyer law firms, hedge funds, car dealers, new car dealerships. I don't know if I've ever done a used car. I've done schools. I've done an Indian reservation. I've done this with public companies, private companies, foreign companies, domestic companies. You train people in a formula, and if you follow let's call it a recipe. If you follow the recipe, you're going to get what you wanted. Yep. If you follow the chocolate chip cookie recipe, you're going to get chocolate chip cookie. You're not going to get a trombone. Yep. You know, you're going to get cookies. And the wonderful thing about having a formula is then you realize, and this is something for your people to write down, SRA, same rules apply. Once you know how to do it, you can just keep doing it. Yep. Is every one of them going to work out? No, but the system is the same. The question is, did you get in at the right time? Did you come in with the right resources? But I meet people all the time in my world, in my journey, who made, $60 million on their exit. Mm-hmm. And now they're like on antidepressants because they can't figure out how to do it again. And the reason is they don't know what happened. They were the right place, right technology, it's the right moment in history, and they kicked butt, and good for them. And they don't have to work anymore, but they feel bad because they realize, I don't know how to recreate this success because I don't really know why it happened in the first place.
That's incredible.
Then you meet other people, doesn't matter what happens to them, they land on their feet and they always come right back. And they can have some terrible, terrible collapse of something, and then they're back and they're relevant.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because they understand same rules apply.
Yeah, I love it. This is so good. In what ways, obviously technology is really, really changing the landscape. I mean, you can't have a conversation with people without AI being brought up. There's always been limited amounts like chatbots and things that you could use to enhance your business.
Not always.
No, correct. Definitely not always.
I remember the yellow pages. I remember beepers. I remember the first guys with a cell phone.
I remember beepers. I will tell you this though. The one piece of the one technology hack that I remember, at least from a work perspective, because this is my first real job out of high school, was I remember sitting down at a desk, getting a stack of cards, and cold calling doctors to buy stocks.
Yes.
I remember that vividly.
So you probably called me. I wasn't a doctor, but man, I got lots of those calls And I remember walking trade shows and picking up every business card I could get and then going back and calling them.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I only did it 6 months, and then I got into a different position, obviously not there now, but yes. And I will tell you, I do believe every single person should have to have some level of sales experience or influence or training at some point in their life, so they understand that side of it, because that will always that can always help somewhere down the line.
Can I riff on that for a minute?
Absolutely.
So I can tell you this beautiful story of my career that sounds like a hockey stick of success.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But I've been through a lot of hard things.
Yep.
And between the cellular phone business, the reason I got out of the cell phone business was because in one meeting, they got all of us together, GT MobileNet, which is now Sprint, got us all together, all the agents, and they said, effective right now in this meeting, we're cutting the commissions, we're going from 30 days to 90 days on pay, we're cutting your co-op advertising, we're like, everything's changing right this second, no time to prep. And I was in my 20s and very successful. I was in my second home by then. My wife and I are driving brand new cars. We had one little child and another one on the way. And I thought I was smarter than all the older guys who all went and closed their doors.
Yeah.
But no, I went till I burned through all my cash reserves, all my credit line, all my credit cards, my home equity, burned through all of it till I'm hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And there's no returning. I was stupid. I wasn't stupid. I was naive. I was inexperienced. I learned a lot. I learned the market is stronger than all my cleverness. The market is more powerful than me. Yeah. And I was sitting in bankruptcy court at 28 years old, 27 maybe right before my 28th birthday, with my wife pregnant with our second child, 9 months pregnant with our second child, going bankrupt and going and turning in those brand new cars back to the bank and getting old beater cars. I had a Taurus that had 400,000 miles on it. My wife had an old Hyundai that we couldn't afford to fix the starter. So she had to park on a hill so she could roll start the car every time. And we lived that for about a little less than a year and a half.
Yep. Until
somebody that I really admired and I knew from a distance asked me to go to lunch with them and offered me the job to be vice president of that soon-to-be public company. And even then, I wondered, am I smart enough? Can I do that job? Sure, I did a great job. Everybody thinks I'm so cool, but I was making it up as I was going, man. I had a formula, but I was young. I was in my 20s. And, but during that time, here's the thing I want to say about that, calling on those business cards like you did, selling stocks. Yeah. So I'm hustling to try to figure out what to do to make, because we didn't have enough, we sucked all the interest out of that, or all the equity out of the house.
Yep.
So they let us keep our house. That was the only thing I got to keep because there was no money in it, right? Mm-hmm. So we got to stay in our house, and I knew I needed to pay for the house and for health insurance. And everything else I could go, we got on Gleaners, where they give you the date food from the grocery store, wilted lettuce, old milk, all this stuff. You'd 2 or 3 days a week, you'd go down and do a pickup. It's $11 a month to be a member of that. Sometimes I had to have them hold my check. But in an effort to make money, I made up these little cards. Back in those days, you still had locally run video stores.
Yep.
And I made up these little discount cards that I could put the logo and the address of the video store. And that was a marketing thing. And I didn't charge them for that. But I could sell the card. They would honor the card. And I could sell for $20. And it had little clip out things.
Yeah.
Free popcorn, free new release, whatever.
Yeah.
And every day I would go knock doors and sell those cards so I could pay my house payment and my health insurance. And I don't know very many people now who would be humble enough to go knock doors and sell don't sell those cards to try to go get a local video. You know, you wouldn't do it now because there's no video stores, but it would be the equivalent, thing, the pizza restaurant or whatever. Because you do what you need to do. During the big recession in 08, it didn't really hit us till 10.
Yep.
My business partner and I, of all these years, living in beautiful home. I had a 7,000 square foot brand new custom home that my wife and I designed with an award-winning architect on 6 acres, decorated to the nines. That thing hit us millions of dollars. Just the tap got turned off.
Yep.
And Lee and I looked at our team and we said, we need the team more than we need all this money in these houses. And we both short sold our homes. We both moved into rental properties, cheap rental properties, and left all the employees working. Nobody took a pay cut.
That's
you know why? Because I knew the economy would come back. And if we were going to survive and be successful again, I needed the team. I didn't need all this trappings. I needed the people. And sure enough, 18 to 24 months later, it came back.
Yep.
You want to talk about loyal employees?
They'll stay with you forever for that.
Yeah. And guess what? We both ended up buying those properties. He remodeled his. I sold mine and made almost $1 million because I bought it during the recession. Right? I rented it and then I bought it. And when we think of our business as a transactional thing, as just a piggy bank for us, we are destined to struggle in life. If we think of our business as a separate thing from us that we need to tend, that we need to be the steward of, we need to take care of it, and it needs to live, even if we have to pay a little bit of a sacrifice during rough times.
Yep.
It's got to survive. It's the goose that lays golden eggs, right? I can eat the goose today and then I'm done. Yep. Or I can take care of the goose and I can eat less and the goose will just keep producing for me, which is what it's done. And that's the big mindset difference between being an owner of a bunch of companies that can do millions of dollars and I can make a boatload of money without working very. Everybody goes, I know you're so busy. I know you're so busy, Aaron. I know you're so busy. I'm like, I'm not that busy. I'm not that busy. I'm not that busy.
I have one last question. This is probably a lie. Okay. It's probably a lie. Just because you have seen enough. This is for me too, by the way. I studied economics in Stony Brook. I get it. I have different theories than what most other people are saying right now. What similarities do you see now as just like in 08? And what do you think the next, call it 6 to 12 months holds? And if you were an entrepreneur, not in your position, just your average entrepreneur, how would you approach that? I know it's a 3-part question. I totally lied. But
it's a good question. It's a good question. And I'm honored that you would ask me such a question because it's a serious question. Notwithstanding what everybody was forecasting, we're not going to have a housing crash. Okay, that's not going to happen. Houses have become more expensive, but there's still a giant shortage of houses. So we don't have all that bad paper like we did in 08. So that's not going to happen again. Okay. I think what's going to happen, and I don't know about 6 to 12 months, but I think over the next couple of years, everybody that I'm following and I've been more concerned about what's going on with China. And China is the next largest economy after the United States. We're still about 50% larger than the Chinese economy, notwithstanding the fact they have 1 billion more people than we do, right? But China has had a big run since the 80s. But things have fundamentally changed in China, and you have one person making all the decisions, and they've tampered with their currency, and they're beginning to default on debt. There was a thing just today, remember you said the date, thing just today that I read that said China had defaulted on its $1 trillion sovereign bond to the United States. Okay. Most big manufacturers, Apple has finally jumped on board, but most big manufacturers have started spreading out, getting out of China, getting into other places because they saw the writing on the wall. Apple is getting out too late, and you're going to have a problem. The big problem we're going to see here, and the great opportunity for entrepreneurs, is we're going to go through a period of lack. We're going to go through a period where it's all of a sudden hard as the Chinese economy collapses and those factories, some of them shut down. We're going to see it harder to get a lot of things that have been readily available for goods and service, or not services, goods. Yeah. You could go to Costco and buy, you could go to Best Buy and get, you could go just, buy a new cell phone every couple of years, or, get a car with all kinds of cool stuff. We're going to have a little moment of lack, and you're going to see scarcity around here for the next few years. And what's going to happen, which is exciting, is that in the midst of that scarcity, the largest economy in the world will create factories again, will create manufacturing and fulfillment instead of just ideas. And you're going to see one of the biggest booms 4 or 5 years from now that we've had in over 100 years. And the thing that's interesting is, because of our need to work with China, Indonesia, Russia to a certain extent, and so on, we've and this dedication to Saudi oil for whatever reason, Middle Eastern oil. If what I'm learning and what I'm watching happens, you're going to see those countries become less important, and the United States has a good likelihood of rising back up as a major manufacturing company or country again. And let's see what the politicians do, but we have all the energy that we need here. We have all the coal, all the oil, lots of wind. Remember, we're the third largest by geography and third largest by population country in the world. We're the biggest economy in the world, and we are the biggest military by over 20 times the next country. We have oceans surrounding us. We are in a prime position to go back to what we were doing, during the Industrial Revolution and then during the post-World War II era. Right? That's what I believe is coming back because of mistakes made by some of our big trading partners. And we're going to be forced to go back to doing what we kind of were happy to give up doing. But I think we're going to see a lack and then a boom. So if I was an entrepreneur right now and I didn't have a huge amount of money, you said just a regular person, I'd be paying close attention to what's going on in supply chain issues and going, what can I do to come up with a solution to even a small problem that a lot of people have? You don't need a big manufacturing plant. What can you do? What software can you create? What repair shop can you open to fix things with, because you can't buy new ones? Right? What can we do right now to be a part of this boom that I think is going to be an enormous explosion of wealth creation over the next 7, 8, 9 years?
Nice.
I think it's going to be the biggest thing. I think 10 years from right now, this country is going to be a very different, more prosperous, and less fragmented place, because we will have no choice but to pull together.
I hope you're right. I believe in some of that. Not one of those points, though, is what I thought we were going to talk about. So I'm very, very interested. Now I'm going to have to look into that.
Go ahead. What were you looking for?
I was looking for continuous rate spikes, hyperinflation, the devaluing of the U.S. dollar, the central bank digital currencies putting a squeeze on everybody, because that will happen.
I'm not worried in any way about the U.S. dollar.
Okay.
Not even a tiny bit.
Okay.
Because there is no other lubricant big enough. There's not a big enough jar of lubricant to lubricate the world economy beside the dollar. And everybody wants to do business in this country. And just like gold-backed currencies 20 years ago, crypto will just get shut down. If the Congress gets sick of it, they'll just say, hey, guess what, banks? Go do whatever you want with crypto. You just can't cash it out in the United States. And that will be the end of it. It will kill it all. And let Ecuador use Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever they're doing. Who gives a darn? The US dollar.
Bank,
go ahead.
That's not what you meant, though. Central bank digital currencies are not your Bitcoin or your Ethereum or whatever.
Are you talking about alternatives to the dollar, like the petrodollar? Or are you talking about, what are you talking about?
Central bank digital currencies, meaning every bank. This is probably public, but every bank has a currency, right? That they are going to, central bank digital currencies are going to replace the dollar and most liquid or most
Physical.
fiat money. Yeah, physical money, fiat money. Okay.
It'll still be fiat. It'll just be digital instead of paper.
Exactly. Are
we going too deep right now? Are we going too deep on this topic for this?
This might be something me and you discuss offline when you have time, because this might lose a lot of people.
So let me give you the answer to what I think you were asking that would be useful to the average person that's listening to the show.
Okay.
In my opinion, as long as you're producing and not trying to live on savings or retirement, it won't matter how the value of the dollar changes, because your numbers will just change, but they will still be in direct proportion to the value you provide in the market. So make sure you stay relevant in the market. Don't do what everybody else is doing. One of the wealthiest people I've ever spent time with said to me one time, if you're standing in line, you're probably in the wrong place. So if you're doing what everybody else is doing, you're missing opportunities. So stay curious, stay informed, and stay productive. And be willing to pivot from what you're doing. If you can see the demand is going down, go, what else? Go back and read the story about Corning glass, Corningware. Do you know about that story?
I don't, but I feel like it may have been covered in one of the books I just read.
I'll do it. Let me do it in 30 seconds. Corningware was being knocked off by the Asian market.
Yeah.
Everybody had Corningware in the 70s and 80s in their home, but they were getting knocked off by foreign competitors. So they realized all of a sudden, we're going to be out of business in 9 months. We're losing market share so fast. We're going to be out of business, a big public company. So the CEO, the chairman, told the president, go talk to all the engineers and figure out what else can we make with our machines, with our staff, with our inventory. What else can we make?
Yeah.
And a bunch of ideas were brought forward. And the one that they stuck with was hair-sized pieces of glass, because at that time there was a big need for fiber optic cable. So they became the largest producer of fiber optic cable. And they've continued doing that exercise, not out of desperation, but out of realizing that they needed to always be looking forward. So now when we look at our cell phones, this Gorilla Glass is made by Corning, Owens Corning. And they continue to figure out what's the next thing that we can do without having to create new machines, new plants, new everything. What else can we do with what we've got? Maybe we've been traditionally doing this. We're going to do something else now, and we're not going to have to completely retool to do it. So stay curious, stay informed, stay active, stay willing to change, and surround yourself with people who know things that you don't know. Hang around with people that are not your clone, Smart. And you'll do okay.
Hey, Aaron, I can't thank you enough. If someone wants to work with you, or more importantly, maybe get your course, where can they go and do that? And if you can send me the link after, I'll post it.
Sure. If somebody wants to get a hold of me, they can just write to me at Aaron Young at LaghlinUSA. And if they want to learn about other stuff I do and learn about the course, they can go to aaronscottyoung.com.
Okay. Easy enough.
Easy enough. What a pleasure. Thank you for having me on today.
Thanks for coming on. This was incredible. All right, guys, please go look into that course, because I'm going to be doing that as soon as we hang up. Someone that has proven themselves time and time again, and I was introduced to Aaron by a mutual friend who I greatly respect. So please check that out, and we will catch you on the next spotlight.